YouTube fellow community, Rolling Stones fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about the 1967 album, compilation album from the Rolling Stones, Flowers, released on London Records. Long story short, this is a compilation album put out basically to appease the American audience in the summer of 1967 during the height of flower power, during the height of Sgt. Pepper, during the height of the Stones not putting out something for American people to buy. That's just kind of how it was. So in the 1967 era, Stones, they had just been riled up by trials for drugs and court cases and getting together sporadically to try to make their album that they'd eventually put out at the end of the year. Output-wise, it was a quiet year for them. They did put out a couple of singles eventually called Dandelion and We Love You. Other than that, that was it. Pretty quiet year for the Stones, and for the American audience, and American record labels in general. They loved to take British albums and chop them up and make their own albums. Classic example being the Beatles stuff. So for me, this is like the Stones version of Yesterday and Today. And something that I think could have been a little bit better with a different track listing, maybe interchange a couple of songs, because there's songs that are on here that were already released or on albums already, unreleased stuff, and then versions of songs that were, or songs that were on the UK versions but not on the American versions of some of their albums. So kind of a hodgepodge of sorts. It came out on June 26, 1967. It went to number 3 in the U.S. It went gold. And it featured some tracks like Take It or Leave It and Out of Time, which were on the British aftermath. They had Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together, which was a single, and also on the American version of Between the Buttons. Backstreet Girl and Please Go Home were on the British version of Between the Buttons, but not on the American one. And then you've got a handful of other tracks here that were singles, like Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Mother's Little Helper, then a couple of unreleased ones. So kind of an interesting setup here. The album cover pictures come from the Aftermath album cover. And apparently it was a joke that, when they were designing the album cover, I guess Andrew Loog Oldham came up with the album name. And then the guys in the band thought it'd be funny if they didn't give any petals to Brian for his flower. I guess it was some prank they were playing on each other at the time, but who knows. This copy, unfortunately, is quite beat up. It's got like an X up here. There's like some marks all over it. The vinyl isn't that great, but I can't find this thing in good shape anywhere. I've said this in other Stones videos. The early Stones stuff, for where I am in the world, is super hard to find, and when you do find it, it's in beat up shape. So I do like this album. This was one of my earliest Stones CDs I ever bought, I think when I was in high school, and I don't know, I've always been attracted to the idea of compilations. I've always liked the weird chopped up US stuff. I thought that was just kind of cool, kind of fun. So if you were around in 1967, maybe you didn't buy Between the Buttons and you bought this one instead. So you got a couple of songs that were on that one, but then a bunch of new stuff's on here too. So, there's a lot to be said for this album, which we'll jump to at the end. But I do want to do a bit of a track by track thing here, just because that's what we do on Giggens TV. Giggens TV. There we go. Ruby Tuesday starts off the album. What could be said about this song that has been said a million times? I mean, it's an absolute brilliant track. It's got Mick doing a great lead vocal. I love the background vocals that back them up at times. The bouncing flutes, the soft acoustic guitars, the slightly groovy atmosphere of this thing, and the chorus is so bright and sunny, and it's just such a sing-along type chorus. Optimistic, it's happy, it's curious. And the singing, I think, is really tender and patient and politely presented. Something kind of out of the norm for the Stones. Well, not really. I mean, you got songs like As Tears Go By in their canon by this point. But, yeah, there's great use of cellos on this thing. Just a really fun, optimistic, bouncy song. I think a great way to open the album. Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadow? So, yeah, Ruby Tuesday was a single in England, not on their albums. And in America, it was on Between the Buttons. So, right off the bat, they've already had this song. Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadows was a single in September of '66 in the U.S., not on an album yet. So that's pretty cool to collect it here. but really big horns on this song. Really thundering drums, like stammering kind of piano, a lingering background vocals, super heavy bass that just plods along and chugs along underneath this thing. There's a growing cacophony of brass throughout this thing that happens and explodes all over the place. I mean, it's a cool song. I love the breaks with the finger clicks. I love the chorus and the verses interplay with each other. The quiet parts, the loud parts. Super fun song, and a style that the Stones would basically never return to or have anything sound like that ever again. It's very unique in their canon. There just isn't something like that. And I like that it ends with this weird guitar riff just kind of meandering off into the distance. So that's a cool track to have on here. Let's Spend the Night Together is track 3 on this thing, and that was already something people owned by this point. It was on Between the Buttons in the US. Charlie really drives this song along. I feel like his drums on this song are fantastic. There's a really wonderful piano that bounces around on this thing, and the call and response background vocals are fun. The harmonies are youthful and optimistic. They're endearing, but they're also raw at the same time. So there's a bit of a naivety to it, but also a little air of sophistication because they knew how to construct a good song. But yeah, the vocals in the middle are really fun, and just a really exciting, lively track. You know, great early Stones. Some people really don't like this song, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of their best tracks. Lady Jane, this was on Aftermath, so no idea why it's here beyond being the B-side of Mother's Little Helper, which is also on this album, so maybe that's why it's here, but, you know, it was also on their live album, so people who had been buying the Stones albums at this point had bought this song 3 times already. But it's nice. It's got some folksy acoustic guitars, slightly Baroque pop influence on this thing. I think Mick's voice is really cool. It's really he really enunciates well. It's really clear. It's really polished, upscale kind of a approach to his singing. It's got that the As Tears Go By feel to it, I guess. Yeah, a little bit of an approach there. But I love the minor to major transitions that happen throughout this track, so not bad. It's one of those ones that, for me anyway, grows on me over time. Out of Time is a pretty cool song. It's got a kind of a 50s rock ballad vibe in the chorus. It sort of sounds like a simple song, but it doesn't really pave a whole lot of new roads here. It kind of just plods along a little bit, but I do like the atmosphere that it creates. I think Mick's voice is really cool on it. The constant piano that bounces along. There are some really good harmonies. So it's a good track, but not the most exciting one so far. But the chorus is, it's catchy and memorable and sticks in your head. And then My Girl, the Temptations song, which was previously unreleased at this point. It was done during the Satisfaction era when they were doing that song. One of several attempts of Temptation songs that the Stones had done in their career. They also did Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Just My Imagination. This is not their best Temptations cover by far. It's probably my least favorite song on the album. It's not super offensive, but it just sounds completely uninspired and boring, and there's really nothing much going on there. Side 2 opens up with Backstreet Girl, which was on the UK version of Between the Buttons, but not the US one. Real interesting song. I mean, there's accordion, there's flutes, there's tambourine. It's almost like a medieval kind of sound to it, another Baroque instrument influence on this one. It's not bad, it's not super exciting, but again, it's one of those ones that kind of grows on you, and you find it sticking in your head more often than you think. It's a really sweet song. It's not my favorite, but it's a sweet song in there. Please Go Home was also on the British UK, same thing, Between the Buttons. Very Bo Diddley riff on this one. Lots of crashing cymbals, stretched out vocals with please go home. That's really cool. There's an echo box on the guitar. Pretty fun song. Pretty fun song. Mother's Little Helper. So this was a single that came out in 1966, and the B-side was Lady Jane. So it's cool to have it on here. So that does help. But this song is absolutely amazing, and sometimes, for me, this song is one of those perfect recipe, perfect storm songs for the Rolling Stones. It's got that perfect harmony of tension, looseness, and storytelling, and combined with that excellent acoustic guitar, those guys knew how to add acoustic guitar underneath the heavy guitars really, really well. And I love that feel. I love the sitar, the bouncing bass, the nonstop drums. It's an absolute smash. For me, I think it's one of the best early Stones songs. I love the ending because the ending is so like tossed off, carefree with a hey at the end. It's pretty cool. Take it or leave it. This song was on the UK version of Aftermath, as was Out of Time. And for me, it's not my favorite song. It's slightly catchy, and again, another earworm type of song that kind of you think about it more than you thought you would. So I guess that might make it a good song. But it's not too exciting. I do like the la-las in the background, but for me, this one sounds like a writing session. It sounds like they had to sit down and figure out, all right, we gotta make an album. Let's write this song. Um, and the last two songs on here, Ride On Baby and Sittin On A Fence, were unreleased songs from the Aftermath era. Ride On Baby's pretty cool. I like the dulcimer on it. I like the chorus. I'm not really sure why this was unreleased. I think it's a really cool song, so I'm glad that it got aired out on this thing. There's a line on this song where it's like, you may look pretty, but I can't say the same for your mind, which is interesting. There's a great drum fill in the middle. Really not a bad song. Can't complain about that one. And Sittin On A Fence, another one that grew on me over and over as I played it more. I remember originally not really caring for it and thought the lyrics were, as John Lennon would say on Christmas Time Is Here Again, lyrically they're not the most inventive thing. But it again sounds like the Stones during a writing session, but I kind of like it, and I like the way it ends the album. It's got that closing song finish, which is pretty cool. But this album for me, I think, could have been a lot better and could have been a more important album than discography. A lot of people are divided on this thing. They think it's a complete piece of crap, and most of it was already released. Some of it should have stayed unreleased, and a couple of songs that were on this thing could have been held off for something else, for a better and bigger collection. I can see that. I can also see it for what it is. It's really not a bad collection of music. It's kind of fun. I like the cover. I think, this is a good little set. It's really not that offensive. One thing I did want to do, because there were a lot of songs that they could have used at this time to put together a decent album. I think if they had waited like another month or two and put this out later in the summer, because Satanic Majesty's request didn't come out till December, so this would have been still in the summer of love and flower power and all that stuff. But I think if Dandelion and We Love You had come out and then got put on this album, I think it would have been a much stronger album. So I made a list here to kind of lay out what I think would have been a cool LP. So on side one, I would have done Dandelion, because it fits the Flowers theme and it's the first track on the album. It would have been a brand new single. It would have introduced people to the new sound of the Stones, and knowing that this would have been a compilation album, kind of like Yesterday and Today was, from the Beatles. So Dandelion, Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Please Go Home, Backstreet Girl, Out of Time, Mother's Little Helper, all on side one. I think it's cool. I think whenever you put together an LP, you gotta start side one off, and each side has to start with a great song and end with a great song, and the middle has to have a transitional feel to get from one to the other, like when you're making a good mixtape. Side two is the same way. I opened it up with We Love You. I think it's a trippy thing to open with. And then Who's Driving Your Plane, which was a B-side. I think the B-side of Paint It Black, I think. What to Do is an unreleased song, I think from '65. That would have been a really cool song to flow into this thing. And then Ride On Baby, Sittin On A Fence, which does have that ending song feel, but I also would have thrown on 19th Nervous Breakdown at the end, because that wasn't on any album, and that was a really big song for them. So I would have done that. I'm going to post that in the comment box below, so you can take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, really, it's not a bad album. The thing that I find the most interesting about it, that could have been more Yesterday and Today like, was when Yesterday and Today came out, it had songs from Revolver on it, which were like early mixes and of a new album that, of songs we were working on for a new album that was not released yet. And while that did upset UK audiences, because the Americans got 3 brand new songs before the UK people did, it was cool because you got like a little bit of Yesterday and Today. So you had like songs that had been singles or B-sides mixed with 3 brand new songs. I think they could have done something similar with this, to really beef it up a little bit. Not that it's lacking, it just could have been better, because, Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together were already on an album that people bought like 6 months earlier. Um, and then you got, what was it? Where'd it go? I, I've already forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, oh, Lady Jane. Yeah, Lady Jane's on, I think, 2 albums at this point that people already bought. So, not that it's a bad thing, but this was commonplace to do in the 60s. Record companies broke up these English albums and made their own compilations. Some of them are offensive, some of them aren't. This one, I don't know if it's essential to a Rolling Stones collector. I think it's a fun album. I think it's cool. Can't really say much more than that about it, but I don't know if I don't think I have the wherewithal to say if it's essential or not essential. I wasn't there when it came out. For me personally, it's been in my collection for a long time. I've had the CD for, geez, I don't know, well over 10-ish years, more than that. And I've always loved it. I thought there was a charm to it. I think as a whole, it plays well. I think the sequencing is really well put together. I think that part's great. It does flow really well. And I think the mixture of eras also work together really well. Bar for My Girl, I think that sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb compared to like Ruby Tuesday or Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby? That said, I think with the alternate track listing I wrote up there, could have been different. It's good. Could have been gooder. And that's it. So what do you guys think about it? My name is Giggens. This has been Flowers by the Rolling Stones. Actually, before I go, let me show you the inside because that's what we do on this channel. Here's the original inner sleeve, London Records. And again, excuse the scratches, but that's the London label there. This is a stereo copy. So this is an album that if I did come across a much nicer shaped copy of it, I would totally grab it. I like the album cover. I like the feel of it. I like the package. I think it's a cool design. It's the Rolling Stones, man. So that's it. If I had to give this a rating, I'd probably give it like a 6-ish, maybe a 7. The content's there. It's good songs. It's just we have them already. So, c'est la vie. Anyways, my name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with the Rolling Stones, Flowers from 1967. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.